Mike Brown, the former FEMA director.
Joining us here is the former FEMA director.
History, I think, was very unkind to you, my friend. Very unkind.
Mr. Brown, thanks for being with us.
This is Michael Brown Unplugged.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Michael Brown Unplugged. I want to get to a story that blew up yesterday that after the podcast was recorded about this secret Facebook group that apparently involves Border Patrol agents. The Committee on Homeland Security, which is headed by Benny Thompson, a Democrat from Mississippi, put out a press release that says this. Today, Representative Benny Thompson, chairman of the Committee on Homeland Security, released the following statement on the news of a secret Facebook group in which Border Patrol agents have posted lewd and derogatory content involving migrants and Democratic elected officials. And here's Thompson's statement. This Facebook group is beyond sexist and racist. It is truly abhorrent and shameful, and there is no excuse for this depraved behavior. The agents found to be responsible for these vile comments should no longer have the privilege of representing the United States of America in uniform. He goes on to say, it is clear these federal law enforcement officials seem empowered by President Trump. Of course, you have to tie it to Trump, right? It is clear these federal law enforcement officials seem empowered by President Trump and seem all too willing to take his anti-immigration rhetoric to the next level when they think no one is watching. It is also clear that DHS, CBP, and the Border Patrol have serious and systemic problems that must be addressed immediately. And then it concludes with this sentence. The chaos within DHS needs to end and proper leadership needs to be put in place. I might agree with it. There's probably chaos within DHS because I think virtually everybody in DHS is working in an acting capacity, and they probably do need proper leadership. Here's the essence of what ProPublica, however you pronounce it, published on June 30th. Members of a secret Facebook group for current and former Border Patrol agents joked about the deaths of migrants, discussed throwing burritos at Latino members of Congress visiting a detention facility in Texas on Monday, and posted a vulgar illustration depicting Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez engaged in oral sex with a detained migrant, according to screenshots of their postings. And then I log on to Twitter. And of course, Twitter being the cesspool that it is, Diana DeGette, the Congresswoman from Colorado's 1st Congressional District, decided that she was going to weigh in. So she tweeted out yesterday the following. I'm disgusted by reports of a secret Facebook group where Customs and Border Protection agents are allegedly posting derogatory content about migrants and members of Congress. I'm calling on the Inspector General to investigate this as quickly as possible and hold those involved accountable. To which I simply responded, accountable for what? Exercising their right of free speech? Come on, Diana. You know what you and your colleagues, Democratic colleagues, say in private about conservatives. It's probably a lot worse than what these people said in a closed group. But that led to a torrent, I mean an absolute torrent of dumbassery from people that do not understand the First Amendment. And you know that I have a real bugaboo about people that don't understand the First Amendment. And in fact, just to make certain that everybody does understand exactly what the First Amendment says, let me read you the text. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Now, if you don't understand that, let me put it in layman's terms. Congress, and by virtue of the 14th Amendment, any governmental agency shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. So what does Diana DeGette want to do in terms of holding people accountable for exercising their right of free speech? Some people would find, including people in this quarter, moi, would find that what they wrote in a closed Facebook page offensive, stupid, probably a little irresponsible on their part to think that they're going to have a Facebook group that's going to be private and that somebody somewhere somehow is never going to expose what they say. So that's stupid on their part. But you know what? I understand what the First Amendment protects. And the First Amendment protects speech that you, or in the case of Diana DeGette, a congressperson, the First Amendment protects speech that other people may find abhorrent, ugly, distasteful, disgusting, vile, vulgar. You pick whatever adjective that you want to use. It does not allow Congress to pick and choose which speech is going to be acceptable speech and which speech is not going to be acceptable. And here's where it really got dumb on Twitter yesterday. Somebody by the name of Dirk Groneman, I have no idea who this guy is. In fact, on his Twitter profile, he describes himself as a useful idiot for hire. If you don't get the reference to a useful idiot, well, look it up. So when I said that, I said in a subsequent tweet that I love all these people that love free speech until it's speech that they find offensive, vulgar, unprofessional. But speech nonetheless is speech. And remember, those are government officials. So you want the government firing people for saying offensive things? Good Lord, people, you should try to understand the First Amendment. But anyway, Dirk Groneman, the guy that claims himself or describes himself, not me, he does it himself, describes himself as a useful idiot, tweeted at me and said, "What a coward you are at Michael Brown USA. Save your apologetics for the Nuremberg judge." Now think about the stupidity of that statement. I understand and support the First Amendment, even when speech is offensive. But I refuse to be a useful idiot, if you get my drift, Mr. Groneman. And just because you're offended doesn't mean it isn't protected speech. Then we have a guy, and I loved this one, Chase Woodruff, who is apparently a reporter for Westword. That's one of those local community papers that you see in different cities around the country. So Chase Woodruff on Twitter says this: members responded with indifference and wisecracks to the post of a news story about a 16-year-old Guatemalan migrant who died in May while in custody at a Border Patrol station in Westlake, Texas. One member posted a GIF of Elmo with the quote, "Oh well," and then cites ProPublica. Now, what I find fascinating is this guy that works for Westword is attacking me because I'm defending the right of individuals to say disgusting, vile, vulgar things. You would think that an individual that works for a newspaper, i.e. a, dare I say it, journalist, a member of the press, you would think that a member of the press would recognize that speech that is offensive, speech that is vulgar, is nonetheless protected speech. But I guess this doofus that works for Westword knows better than an old country lawyer what First Amendment jurisprudence is. I'm truly disturbed by this idea that the First Amendment only protects speech that somebody, whoever somebody is, finds acceptable. Now, do I think what the Border Patrol agents or whoever it is in this group, because apparently it's not just Border Patrol agents, it's some private individuals, some retired individuals, it's a whole plethora of individuals involved in this private group. I find it stupid what they said. Some of it is offensive. Some of it's just outright idiocy, particularly if they think it was going to be kept private. But just because we find the speech offensive or vulgar does not mean that it shouldn't be given the protections of the First Amendment. Because I simply ask, I'll ask this question until the day I die, because I think people are just so stupid about this. If there is speech that you don't like, and I'm talking to you, if there's speech that you don't like, what about speech that I don't like? Or what about speech that Billy Bob over here doesn't like, or that Susie doesn't like, or that Pam doesn't like, or that Nancy doesn't like, or that Charlie doesn't like? Who's going to be the arbiter of speech that is acceptable and not acceptable? You see, the founders believed, rightfully so, that fundamental to the functioning of this republic is the ability of people, individuals, without fear of reprisal or fear of censorship, should be able to speak their minds freely and openly, even if what they say somebody else finds offensive. Imagine a world where you have to go around constantly concerned about, well, if I say this, is somebody going to be offended? Or take it even worse. Take it to the Nuremberg reference. What if what I say is not acceptable to the government? When the government has the power to control speech, even speech that you may find offensive, vulgar, repulsive, whatever adjective you want to use, when the day comes that the government has the ability to censor that speech, and I'll put in that lump, hate speech. I absolutely hate the concept of hate speech. Hate speech should be as protected as quoting the Bible. And if we get to a point where we have to be concerned, looking constantly over our shoulder, concerned about what we say may be offensive to somebody, then you're going to rue the day that you started bitching about people saying things that you thought were vile, vulgar, reprehensible, socially unacceptable, juvenile, whatever you want to do. I don't care. Because fundamentally necessary to the functioning of a democratic republic like ours is freedom of speech. I got so mad last night, I walked away from Twitter for a while because in addition to that Yahoo, there was a guy that, let me see if I can find it. Oh, here it is. Jason Peterson. He goes by @JasonMP85. Now, I can't read this verbatim because this is not an explicit podcast, but he tweeted at me, look at this Armisen-F-Spacey with a lead poisoning hairline mother effer. Now, here's what I find absolutely fascinating about, and he looks to be all of 12 years old, but I don't know how old he is. It doesn't really make any difference. But look at this guy on Twitter exercising his right of free speech, calling me an Armisen-F-Spacey with a lead poisoning hairline mother effer. Here he is exercising his right of free speech under the First Amendment, calling me all sorts of names, but objecting to other speech because he finds the other speech vulgar or offensive. The cognitive dissonance is strong with him. The lack of self-awareness is absolutely mind-boggling. Those are the useful idiots. Those are the useful idiots that now surround us in society. Those who, it's like Antifa, calling themselves the anti-fascists, when indeed they are the ones who are fascist. We live in this Orwellian world now where down is up and up is down and war is peace and peace is war. I don't need to cite George Orwell. Maybe I do need to cite George Orwell because clearly people don't get it. I would encourage you. It's at ProPublica.org. ProPublica.org. And the headline is, Inside the Secret Border Patrol Facebook group where agents joke about migrant deaths and post sexist memes. Yeah, it's juvenile. It's stupid. Some of it's outright offensive. It's certainly insensitive. And I think it's protected. Somebody said that it violates the Border Patrol's code of conduct. It very well might. It might violate the code of conduct. But they're going to have to get past the free speech argument first, particularly considering it was said in private and not for public consumption. So the end of my rant for the day about the First Amendment. But as we come upon the celebration of Independence Day, by the way, that's another bugaboo of mine. We don't celebrate the 4th of July. We celebrate independence. That's what the 4th of July is about, celebrating independence. As we approach Independence Day, stop and think about those Bill of Rights. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of you and me to peaceably assemble, the freedom for you and me to petition the government for redress of grievances. That's the First Amendment, protected by the Second Amendment. I don't know, the Irish guy who claims to be Hispanic, Robert Francis O'Rourke, who goes by Beto, who, by the way, apparently John Hickenlooper's finance guy, has jumped ship to go become the finance guy for Beto O'Rourke. Isn't that, what's that phrase? You jump from the fire into the frying pan? You're going from one losing campaign to another losing campaign? Well, Beto O'Rourke, Robert Francis O'Rourke, decided that it was time to go, of all places, the one place where he can get out the base of his supporters, and that would be Juarez, Mexico. And when he got to Juarez, he held a little mini town hall and said this.
We know that people are literally losing their lives. We just heard this from the gentleman, losing their lives as they're no longer able to cross at ports of entry. They're trying to cross in between ports of entry. We as a country have decided that that's what they will do. We put them in this precarious position.
So he's basically blaming America. We can't allow just thousands and thousands of people to cross at ports of entry seeking asylum. So they're metered. A certain number of people get through and you have to wait your turn. I mean, it's like, like a turnstile. Beto O'Rourke says that America has put them in this precarious position of having to go cross the border illegally somewhere else. What is it about Democrats that blame America for everything? I'm an American. I didn't make that decision. The individuals who make the decision to either hire and don't give me this crap about, well, Michael, they're coming from S-hole countries, or Michael, they're suffering because of gang violence, or they don't have jobs. I get all of that. That's not my responsibility. If you want to make it my responsibility, then you're going to have to just change the way this country is governed, which is obviously what the Democrats want to do. But we cannot be responsible for every choice made by every human being on this planet to come to America illegally and cross at a river.
We have caused this suffering.
We have caused this suffering. No, we haven't caused the suffering. The suffering is caused when someone decides that they're going to leave point A, cross into this country illegally at point B, cross the Rio Grande River, and run the risk that either they will drown, they will die in the desert, they'll get murdered by coyotes, and I don't mean the animal kind. Well, maybe I do mean the animal kind. They'll get killed by the cartels. They make those choices. I don't make those choices. You don't make those choices. And even if you happen to be a bleeding heart liberal that somehow believes that you are responsible for the choices that they make, you might actually have something wrong with you. Because those individuals made their choices. Just like you made whatever choice you made this morning to have whatever you're going to have for breakfast, or to do whatever you're going to do today. You made that choice. Nobody else made that choice for you. When you get stuck in traffic, you have a choice. You can either get mad at the traffic, or you can recognize that the traffic is what it is, and you can either allow your blood pressure to soar, or you can just deal with the reality that you find yourself in. Beto O'Rourke's not done. He goes on to say,
also have the opportunity to make this better and to make this right.
We have the opportunity to make this better and make this right. Let's make the assumption for a moment, a correct assumption I might add, that these people are escaping violence, gang members, cartels, lack of economic opportunity. They're escaping, well, in a nutshell, S-hole countries. Am I responsible? Are you responsible for the S-hole country that those people live in? They're responsible. They are responsible. If they wanted to, they could figure out a way to take up arms. They could start a revolution. They could try to overturn their government. They could demand that their government do better. They could demand that their government not be corrupt. They could do all sorts of things. They can do that. But I thought, we got the Koch brothers, we got George Soros, they're banding together because they want to end all of these foreign interventions. And I thought that Democrats, I thought most Americans were opposed to foreign interventions. So what are we supposed to do? Go to Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, and we're supposed to intervene in those countries, and we're supposed to nation build? I thought we were done with the idea of nation building. Anyway, the bottom line is Beto O'Rourke is in Mexico, is in Juarez, Mexico, blaming Americans for the plight not even of Mexicans necessarily, but of Guatemalans and Hondurans and El Salvadorans that are coming across all the way through Mexico. It's the Blame America First crowd. And I think it's sick. The other thing that I think is sick, and I got to laugh about this one. So Pete Buttigieg is at a annual conference of the Rainbow Push Coalition. Oh, that's Jesse Jackson's group. So Pete Buttigieg decides to go to Chicago or wherever it is, and he is speaking to Jesse Jackson's group. He better keep his hands in his pocket, watch his wallet. But he decides that our healthcare system is racism.
Nationwide American solutions. Now, I'm running for president as mayor of an American city, admittedly not a traditional move, but I'm doing it because we need national politics to rediscover its local basis, to recognize that the toughest local issues both cause and reflect our most urgent national issues. We are living in shadows cast through time and across the country, and policing is only part of the story. Yes, the uniform is burdened by racism, but it goes far beyond that. Our healthcare system is burdened by racism. If black women are dying 3 times as often from maternal complications as white women, if, as we just heard, that here in Chicago, there is an enormous disparity in life expectancy from one neighborhood to another.
Oh, I got to pause there. Do you suppose that might be because the thugs are killing other thugs in some neighborhoods, and in other neighborhoods the thugs aren't killing other thugs? What about that, Mayor Pete? Huh?
We know that our housing is burdened by racism, the result of intentional policies, local and national, that segregated our neighborhoods by race, and when they could no longer be enforced by law, they were enforced by bureaucracy and by intimidation. Our schools are burdened by racism, not just in the history that led to Brown versus Board, but in the...
we're about halfway through the soundbite, and I've come to the conclusion that I suppose if you're going to speak to the Rainbow Push Coalition, their annual conference, Jesse Jackson's group, I suppose if you're going to give a speech, you better use the word racism, and you better apply racism to every conceivable social ill that we have is solely because of racism. Oh, he's not done.
The fact that in the years since, our schools remain segregated. All of American life takes place under these shadows, not as some distant historical artifact, but as a burning present reality that hurts everyone and everything it touches. And if we do not tackle the problem of racial inequality in my lifetime, I am convinced that it will upend the American project in my lifetime. It brought our country to its knees once. And if we do not act, it could again. And so I believe this is not only a matter of justice, but a matter of national survival. Now, for some time, most of the policy debate around race has taken place under the polite assumption that if we simply delete a racist policy and replace it with a neutral policy, then inequality will sort of work its way out of the system. and take care of itself. But it doesn't work that way, does it?
If it doesn't work that way, then why do we even go to the trouble of enacting the Voting Rights Act? Why did we even go to the trouble of freeing the slaves? Why did we go to any trouble to try to put racism behind us? Pandering of the first degree. But I don't know. If he wants to talk about racism, how about the fact that hate preacher Louis Farrakhan and his Nation of Islam organization's pages were deplatformed from Facebook on May 2, back during Facebook's purge of hate speech. Now, while most remained banished, Facebook kind of oddly allowed one page dedicated to Farrakhan and black supremacy to return from the grave. The page is called Supporters of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan and openly describes itself as a replacement for the group we lost called the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Its group description cites really strange, kind of bizarrely written conspiracies about white oppression of black culture through mind control. One post says, these thoughts and ideologies that clearly benefit white societies were shrewdly programmed into the minds of millions of black people through media subliminal programming without most even realizing it. Art Bell. I need Art Bell. I need a producer that can play the Art Bell soundbite right now. I don't get it. If Pete Buttigieg is going to go to Jesse Jackson's push conference and claim that every aspect, I mean literally every aspect of American life that you can imagine, housing, food, health care, transportation, everything is somehow imbued with racism. And Louis Farrakhan is still on Facebook, the avowed anti-Semite who believes that the media, through subliminal programming, is somehow keeping blacks on the plantation, then I don't know. Maybe I'm just completely wrong. I give up. I truly give up. I give up because last night, Tamara's at the undisclosed location. So I decided to, went out to dinner with a friend, came back, sat down, and I turned on the television. And I watched a little bit of Fox News, watched a little bit of CNN, I watched a little bit of MSNBC. And I found myself at the point that I wanted to reach over into the side table next to the chair I have in our little den area and pull out my Smith & Wesson 44 mag and just blow the crap out of my TV. Honest to goodness, if people sit and watch that crap all day and all night, it has to poison your mind. Turn off your TV. I remember, and I just happened to tune in. It wasn't because I deliberately was looking for it. It's just that when I turned to Fox News, it was Tucker Carlson. And Tucker had on Dinesh D'Souza and some Yahoo kid that they were talking about Andy Ngo, the gay Asian journalist, and I describe him that way because that's how he describes himself, who has been covering the antics and the violence of Antifa for a long time now. And Tucker showed actual video of the anarchists with their masks, with their cement-laden milkshakes, with their brass knuckles, with their mace, with their silly string, with everything, even to the point of showing the attacks, the actual physical attack on Andy Ngo. And then in one kind of gruesome, it actually made me wince. It showed Andy Ngo trying to escape the crowd. They'd already stolen his GoPro camera. They had already tried to pull his backpack off. And as he is trying to keep the mace and everything out of his eyes and to make it to the edge of the street, somebody walks up with what appears to be a rock of some sort and bashes the back of his head with it. That's Portland, Oregon. And it was Jesse Waters that was filling in for Tucker Carlson. Jesse Waters. And so Jesse's asking this guy about, are you willing to condemn that violence? And of course, the guy first starts talking about Trump, starts talking about Charlottesville, starts talking about the alleged violence, somehow drags Jussie Smollett into it. And I'm thinking this is insanity, utter insanity. Why spend your time listening to that drivel? I don't get it. And I truly believe that cable television, and I truly believe that the media in this country is destroying this country. I believe it. And if you think that's hate speech, I think we'll survive. Don't get me wrong. I think we're much more resilient than these yahoos would ever believe that we are. But I watch it and I think it really is Orwellian, and we're poisoning our minds. San Francisco is going to spend $600,000 to erase history. Actually, more than $8,000. That was the amount that John Ashcroft's Justice Department. Do you remember this? When the Bush administration first came into office back in 2001, John Ashcroft, who was a former senator from Missouri, is nominated and appointed to be the Attorney General. And he spends $8,000 to cover up the busty spirit of justice statue and her bare-chested male equivalent, the majesty of law, in the Department of Justice's Great Hall back in 2002. The Victorian move against the Art Deco sculptures spurred a bazillion lampoons. A blue burqa for justice, Maureen Dowd called it. The Harvard Crimson. In the Harvard Crimson, a young Pete Buttigieg wrote, "It seems odd that an infant is supposed to feed on them and a grown man is expected at some point to behold them, but for a period in between we feel the need to see to it that no child ever sees a breast." I kind of got a kick out of that, actually. But it made me wonder what's going on in San Francisco. San Francisco is going to spend $600,000 to erase murals that were put up during the Great Depression. They're going to destroy those public murals by a New Deal era communist. Oh, you mean so a New Deal era communist painted some murals that people now don't like, so we're going to erase our history? You might think I would actually be on the side of taking down a mural that was painted by a communist, but no, it's part of our history and I want it to stand up. I don't believe in erasing history. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this whole Nike controversy because, well, probably a lot of you are not going to agree with what I have to say. But everybody is giving Arizona Governor Doug Ducey the highest accolades for pushing back against Nike after it nixed these shoes with the original Betsy Ross flag on them because that dumbass Colin Kaepernick finds American heritage offensive. In one story from Arizona Central, it reads this way. In a series of overnight tweets, Ducey announced he is yanking millions of dollars in state incentives offered to get Nike to build a manufacturing plant in the suburban city of Goodyear. Instead of celebrating American history the week of our nation's independence, Nike has apparently decided that Betsy Ross is unworthy and has bowed to the current onslaught of political correctness and historical revisionism, Ducey wrote in a series of tweets early Tuesday. Nike. Why is Arizona? If you want to talk about how capitalism has become corrupted, this is it. Revenue for Nike rose 9.7% to $9.95 billion, beating estimates of $9.94 billion. The company's net income rose to $1.09 billion, or about 67 cents a share in the first quarter, ending August 31st. This is from last year, from $950 million, or 57 cents per share a year earlier. Why are we giving Nike anything? I want Nike to make as much money as humanly possible. And I don't care whether it's by selling shoes with flags or not flags. I don't care how they do it. Nike, make all the money you want. And if you want to get in bed with Colin Kaepernick, that's your choice. Just as it's my choice not to buy your product. But what I don't understand is why Governor Ducey is getting accolades for pulling, quote, millions of dollars in incentives from a country that made almost $10 billion. That's the corruption of capitalism. That's where we as conservatives are losing the fight. If we really want capitalism to survive and not be trashed into the dustbin of history because of all these Marxists in our midst, we're going to have to quit doing stupid things like giving a company like Nike a couple of $1 million here or there to, hey, come to Arizona, come to Colorado. I know they're all whores. The states are whores and the companies are whores. Yeah, I said it. So, Governor, I don't give you accolades. You shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. Oh, but Michael, other states are doing it. Does that make it right? No, it doesn't make it right. Nike is going to prostitute themselves. The states are prostituting themselves. And as much as I think prostitution ought to be legal in all 57 states, I don't think prostitution between companies and state governments is a good thing, any more than I think prostitution between municipal governments and stadium authorities is any different. It's still prostitution. And speaking of prostitutes, it isn't just Huffington Post or BuzzFeed or CNN. The entire propaganda apparatus of the left is really starting to show signs of fiscal strain. Think Progress, an excretion of the leftist think tank Center for American Progress, is actually drowning in debt and is now up for sale. Ad revenue has dropped, as have contributions from CAP and CAP donors, the Center for American Progress. Last year, Think Progress spent $3 million more than it brought in. And for once, progressives actually seem to realize that deficit spending can't go on forever. It was not made immediately clear, according to this story, just how long the Center for American Progress would look for a suitor for Think Progress and whether or not the site would be shuttered if no suitor was found. Nor was it made clear how much, if anything, the Centers for American Progress would be asking for in return for control of the site. You know, what they might do is they might sell it for $1, kind of like Newsweek. I'll buy it. In fact, if anybody knows anybody at Think Progress, I'll give $2. I could probably, let me look. Hang on a second. Yep. Hang on. Look. I got a $20 bill. I'll give $20. I'll give $20 for the Think Progress website. And then we'll have some fun. Yes. I'll get all of you. I'll make all of you instant editors and reporters. And we'll turn Think Progress, the website, we'll turn it into a satire site. Oh, we'll have so much fun. Well, maybe CNN. At some point, CNN's going to start cratering too. But $20, all right? $20 for Think Progress. Come on. I need an agent. I need a broker. Somebody go buy it for me for $20. I'll give you $20. Yeah. So you buy it for $20, you make $20. That's a pretty good commission, right? Go buy it. Remember how I said at the very beginning of this podcast that I thought the First Amendment was absolutely essential to the functioning of this republic? Well, Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, that name probably doesn't mean squat to you. But if I were to show you a picture of Frederica Wilson, you go, oh, yeah, that nut job. Well, she apparently thinks that if you make fun of members of Congress online, you should be prosecuted.
Congresswoman Dean. There every day. They're shredding the record. They're shredding the documentation.
Those people who are online making fun of members of Congress are a disgrace. And there's no need for anyone to think that is unacceptable. We're going to shut them down.
Wait a minute. Did she just say there's no reason for anybody to think that that is unacceptable? I think she meant to say there's no reason for anyone to think that that is acceptable. So, Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, I'm making fun of your linguistic inabilities. Back her up. Back her up. I don't mean literally back her up. Back up the soundbite.
Online making fun of members of Congress are a disgrace. And there's no need for anyone to think that is unacceptable. We're going to shut them down and work with whoever it is to shut them down, and they should be prosecuted. You cannot intimidate members of Congress, threaten members of Congress. It is against the law, and it's a shame in this United States of America.
Whoa, wait a minute. First, she's upset because people are making fun of them, and then she says, but you can't intimidate them. Which is it? She's so stupid she doesn't know the difference. Oops, I'm sorry. Can I be prosecuted for that? Do you see why the First Amendment is so important? It's because of dumbasses like Frederica Wilson. By the way, she's from Florida, in case you don't remember. Let's get a couple of taxpayer relief shots in before we get done today. The first one comes to us from Cincinnati, Ohio. A 15-year-old kid is shot dead, shot by a woman that he was trying to rob.
It's upsetting, but we can't give up.
One child shot dead, another one charged with murder. Community activists call the news discouraging amid ongoing efforts to keep kids on the right track and off the streets.
Because if we don't find something for them to do, it's a guarantee that the world's going to find a whole lot for them to do.
On Saturday, 15-year-old Jordan Lara was shot on Reading Road near Golson Avenue. Police say he and another 15-year-old were committing an armed robbery. Police say that's when someone fired at the two suspects. Lara died days later, but the other 15-year-old could now face many years behind bars.
The way the laws are today, if you are basically an accomplice of something, and you're doing something, and your person that your accomplice gets killed, you're charged with his murder.
Youth activities like this drumline group were created to teach discipline and the value of hard work.
Give them something to do in the neighborhood during the summer, opposed to being out in the streets, having nothing to do, getting into trouble.
Outreach workers hope more kids get involved with these kinds of activities instead of putting others' safety in jeopardy. And as far as we know right now, the 15-year-old is the only one facing charges. Reporting live tonight.
Well, I'm all for programs that help troubled youth or any youth stay out of trouble. That's fine. This was an armed robbery. The individual, that one or both of them, had weapons on them. They tried to rob the wrong woman. If you don't think that women can't defend themselves, you're not paying attention. Lawrence County, Arkansas, both county and state law enforcement are investigating a shooting early Saturday at Lake Charles State Park that left a person dead, according to Lawrence County Sheriff Jeff Yates. Yates said authorities got a call around, guess the time, 3:15 a.m. 3:15 a.m. Lawrence County Sergeant Jamie White said in a news release that a woman said that an intruder had been shot in her home. There, investigators with the Lawrence County Sheriff's Office and special agents with the Arkansas State Police found Christopher Robinson, 35, of Powhatan, dead from a gunshot wound. Still under investigation, no arrests have been made. And I doubt there'll be any arrests made. Someone breaks into your home, you defend yourself, probably a justifiable homicide. And then this one from San Angelo, Texas. Just before midnight on Saturday, authorities said that a 20-year-old unidentified resident of the Sedona Ranch Apartments in San Angelo, Texas, shot and killed one of two men attempting to break into his apartment. Andrew Pitts said, "I just heard a couple of pops, gunshots." Pitts lives just below the apartment where the shooting took place. He told the news station that it's pretty close to home, don't really know what to think. Well, but here's the rest of the story. So there's a home invasion, somebody gets killed, the person who was committing the crime, they now have a GoFundMe page. A GoFundMe page has been set up for the criminal.
Angelo police still looking for the second intruder involved in a home invasion over the weekend. Police say one of those intruders was shot and killed by the resident. KTexas reporter John Rapolo was in San Angelo today. He joins us now live from our newsroom with more. John?
Yeah, well, 20-year-old Jaden Phillips was that intruder who was shot and killed. Tonight, his family telling KTexas that he was murdered. Friday night, just before midnight, police say a 20-year-old unidentified resident of the Sedona Ranch apartment shot and killed one of two men trying to break into his home.
I just heard a couple of pops, maybe
gunshots.
Gunshots, yes.
Andrew Pitts lives just below the apartment where it all happened.
Pretty close to home. Don't know really what to think. I just couldn't believe it happened this close.
After the resident opened fire, one of the intruders fled. He remains on the run. But the other, 20-year-old Jaden Phillips, was killed. Police say the resident and Phillips knew each other. We tried to talk to the resident today, but there was no answer. Meanwhile, KTexas has learned this GoFundMe page has been set up for the intruder who was shot. A friend of Jaden Phillips said in the narrative, Phillips was murdered. The narrative goes on to say, regardless of what is being released, the incident remains under investigation.
So the guy who was committing the home invasion, the criminal, was murdered. I don't think that's what the facts bear out. But again, it shows you what kind of Orwellian world that we actually do live in. So there are your taxpayer relief shots for the week. I want to close out because there will not be a podcast tomorrow because of Independence Day, or as some people call it, the 4th of July. I just want to remind you about what Independence Day is about. It's right in the Declaration of Independence. Imagine that. The founders were so brilliant that when they declared their independence from England, they wrote a Declaration of Independence. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which had connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to separation. A lot of fancy words, a very simple meaning. That when you're bound together with another country and you are separating from that country, a respect shown to the opinion of mankind demands that we give the reasons why we're doing what we're doing. And so they did. They gave the reasons. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Meaning, first of all, you look to natural law, you look to God's law, and then you form a social compact. And when you do that social compact, governments are created among men, and that those governments get their power from the governed, from you and me, the people. It is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to effect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light or transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. What do they mean by that? Too many people are just happy to suffer. I think about those S-hole countries. They're just happy to suffer until they find an outlet. And that escape valve happens to be through Mexico into the land of freedom, the United States. But the founders recognized that it is the plight of mankind generally to just remain shackled. and that they refuse to remain shackled. Then they write, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove these, let facts be submitted to a candid world. And then the founders listed all of the complaints against the King of England, against King George. I don't want to read through all of them, but I would encourage you to do so, because some of those complaints against King George we might make against our current rulers. Go read it. Just take the time. You can get it online. Good grief. Just go online. I don't even care if you use Google this time. Surely Google won't censor the Declaration of Independence. Just Google U.S. Declaration of Independence text and just read it. It won't take you very long. Just read it. Thanks for listening to this episode of Michael Brown Unplugged. I'll probably be back on Friday with a new episode. But just in case, remember you can sign up on the iHeart app and get the new episodes downloaded to your smartphone, your tablet, your computer every single day. They get uploaded every morning at about 2 a.m. And so they're the first thing on your phone. You can subscribe to it on iTunes, same thing, or any place where you get podcasts. And then last but not least, I would ask you to follow me on all the social media sites, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. You can see all the arguments that I have, particularly on Twitter. You might get a kick out of it. You'll find all of those links at my website, Michael Brown Today. Happy Independence Day.